We are now joined by that South Carolina Attorney General, Alan Wilson. He oversaw the prosecution in this case. Mr. Wilson, good morning to you, sir.
Craig, it's great to be with you. Thank you.
Perhaps you were not surprised by the verdict itself, Attorney Wilson. Were you surprised at all by the speed with which the jury reached that verdict?
Listen, as a former line prosecutor back before I was the Attorney General, one thing I never did, Craig, is I never put a whole lot into the time that a verdict could come back. Obviously, when it came back as quickly as it did, it made me feel good, but you just never know what's going to happen until you hear that indictment read out by the clerk.
I mean, there was, of course, the kennel video. You had the financial crimes. There was the timeline that was presented. What do you think was the state's most persuasive piece of evidence that led to this conviction?
Alex Murdaugh. I think Alex Murdaugh was our biggest piece of evidence when he took the stand. I think that was fatal for him ultimately. I mean, obviously, he had created a web of lies for over a decade that led to this culminating point in this trial. Obviously, he had lied. He'd been lying his way out of things for so long that he'd forgotten what it was like to tell the truth. And as you said just a moment ago, that kennel video that no one knew existed until months after the murders occurred, it was basically Paul speaking from beyond the grave that yes, that Alex Murdaugh was there just moments before Maggie and Paul were brutally murdered, and that was a major piece of the state's case.
So you think had Alex Murdaugh not taken the stand, we might have seen a different outcome?
No, I think that was the nail. I always believed, we were prepared. When I signed his indictments on the double murder, I believed that we had the evidence to convict. Otherwise, I wouldn't have signed the indictments. But when he took the stand, that was basically, in my opinion, Alec had made a very successful career of giving closing arguments to juries and winning major cases and making a lot of money. This was his closing argument to the jury. I believe, in my mind, that he believed that he could talk his way out of this. And at the end of the day, I think it's what sealed it for him.
The state was never actually required to provide a motive in this case, but you guys spent a fair amount of time trying to provide one nonetheless. Why?
Yeah.
Why was that?
Well, one of the things that I would get from people on the street is, Craig, people could understand a spouse killing another spouse, but the way that Paul and Maggie were murdered, his son, the brutality of it, people just had a hard time making that leap. But what you have is you have a family legacy that is over 100 years old. You have a man that has lived a lifestyle of privilege in a world that many of us will never know. And all of that was going to end eventually, and he was getting desperate. He was in survivor mode at this point. And that was always the state's theory, that this guy wasn't just about money. People say he wasn't just killing his wife and son because of the money he wasn't making. It was everything. It was an entire lifestyle and a lifetime that was going to come to an end. And he was getting desperate. And he basically, I believe that he probably loved them in his own way, but he loved himself more. And killing them was the price he was willing to pay in order to preserve his way of life.
Attorney General Wilson, this, as you know, is a case that really has captivated the country for a long time now. What do you think it was about this particular case that so many people found so interesting?
I mean, Craig, just look at it. It's got everything. It's got everything. I mean, you can't write this story in Hollywood. It's almost like it's a generational story. It's a story, it goes back to the boat case, and it goes back decades before that. And then you look at the complexity of the case. You look about, this case was, was a circumstantial case, but it was so much information, so much evidence that led to this conviction. I think people were just captivated by not just the complexity, but, it was a sensational case on the national stage. I do want to remind people, as interesting as this case was, a lot of lives were destroyed. 2 people were brutally murdered, and there's a wake of victims from Alex Murdaugh leading up to this. And I want to remind people that there are real lives and a real family that was destroyed because of his actions.
Especially his son, Buster. South Carolina's Attorney General, Alan Wilson. Attorney General Wilson, thank you for your time, sir. Thank you. Thank you.
Hey, thanks for watching. Don't miss the Today Show every weekday at 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 Pacific on our streaming channel, Today All Day. To watch, head to today.com/allday or click the link right here.